In 771 BC, Haojing, capital of the Zhou Dynasty, was captured by the Chuanrong tribe to its west. Zhigongsheng was the Zhou ruler. For the love of a woman, he lost his life, the capital city, and the kingdom he had inherited from his father. Flames of war erupted at the foot of Mount Lishan and beyond. Overlooking the distant ruined city, one would imagine it was the end of a dynasty known for its special rites and music. However, the 275-year-old Zhou Dynasty survived the disaster. It moved eastward to Laozi and began a new regime known as the Eastern Zhou Dynasty. From then on, China experienced a tumultuous period lasting around 500 years. However, it was during this period that the Chinese nation matured. Mount Zhongnan was a tranquil sanctuary 2,500 years ago. One day, a middle-aged man named Yin Shi arrived. His presence broke the prolonged tranquility on Mount Zhongnan. He was commander of the garrison at Hanggu Pass during the Eastern Zhou period. The state, after some 200 years, was growing decadent and weak. Its rampant corruption and chaotic governance greatly frustrated Yin Shi. In 517 BC, he left Hanggu Pass to live in seclusion on Mount Zhongnan, which was actually located in the Qin state. He built a thatched house in a charming location. Throwing all mundane troubles into the air, he immersed himself in nature. If it wasn't for a twist of fate, he would have lived his entire life in such an environment. On an early summer morning, amid the faint sound of thunder, he saw something never seen before. Purple clouds flowing westward. He was gifted in astronomical knowledge and knew that westward flowing purple clouds indicated a sage was coming from the east. Who could it be? Yin Shi wondered. In order to meet this sage and listen to his instructions, a puzzled Yin Shi broke his seclusion. He returned to Hanggu Pass and remained there awaiting the sage. At sunset one day, An old man with an unadorned head and white beard approached the pass gate. Yinshi told himself this must be the very sage for whom he had been waiting. The old man was Laozi, the founder of Taoism. Modern scholars believe Laozi was born in 571 BC in an area on the northern bank of the Guo River in the state of Chen. It is located in the border region between today's Hunan and Anhui provinces. Laozi's real name was Li Er. His father and ancestors were all nobles, and some of them once served as diplomatic envoys stationed in other states. He was clever and studious as a child. As a boy, he often astonished others with his unusual sense of calm and erudite conversation. According to legend of profound scholars, Shangrong, a great scholar of the Chu state, came to Laozi's hometown and took the boy as his student, laying a solid foundation for his glorious and magnificent future. In 557 BC, Laozi reached the age of 15. In order to advance, he left his hometown for a study tour in Laozi, capital of the Eastern Zhou Dynasty. On Shangrong's recommendation, Laozi was admitted to the government-run Imperial College. The college was the highest institution of learning at that time, a community of scholars of the first rank. College rules were rigorous, and students were encouraged to freely express their minds. Laozi studied very hard and made progress with each passing day. In 547 BC, Laozi became an official in charge of books and important documents in the Eastern Zhou court. It was a position equivalent to being in charge of both the National Library and the state archives. Like a fish set free in a lake, Laozi found a new world of knowledge from ancient books. He spent many years reading as many as he could. Books were his constant companion. Laozi was a scholar well-versed in rituals. His primary political ideal was to restore the monarchy of the Zhou Dynasty and see it ruled by rites and music. Could the Zhou court retrieve the lost glory of 200 years? Although the king indulged himself in endless entertainment and women, Laozi waited anxiously yet patiently. In 520 BC, Ji Gui, king of the Eastern Zhou, was entertaining Ji Tan, a minister of the state of Jin. At the banquet, the king told Ji Tan the drinking vessels they were using came from the state of Lu, and Jin needed to pay him a tribute. Unexpectedly, Ji Tan declined on the grounds that they seldom received benefits from the Eastern Zhou. Laozi attended the banquet to record what the king said. The behavior and words of the king disappointed Laozi. Gradually, he lost interest in helping rejuvenate the Zhou regime. The king felt disgraced. He listed what he had given to the Jin court. Jitan's ancestors were in charge of the ancient books in Jin. The king accused Jitan of forgetting his place. Because the king made little attempt to improve the administration of his kingdom, he became over-reliant on the tribute offerings of his vassals. His prestige continued to fall. The end of his reign was in sight. How could people live in peace and happiness? Laozi began intensive study to find answers to these questions. With the birth of Tao, Chinese began a period of enlightenment, the awakening of a civilization. At this point, Laozi had gained fame for his Tao well beyond Eastern Zhou. He was even hailed as a sage. However, in such turbulent times, even a sage wasn't exempt from trouble. In 516 BC, when King Jing of the Eastern Zhou died, his two sons, Jimeng and Jichao, fought over succession. After a bloody battle, Jichao was expelled from the imperial palace. Jichao was unreconciled to his defeat. Seeking revenge, he fled to the state of Chu with almost all of the ancient books and records from the Eastern Zhou court. This was the most serious catastrophe the Zhou Dynasty had suffered since it moved its capital to Laozi. These ancient records accumulated for generations were thus lost, along with the glory of the Zhou Dynasty. Facing an empty library, Laozi felt at a loss. He realized his sentimental attachment to the Zhou had come to an end. According to records of the Grand Historian, Laozi finally turned his back on the failing Eastern Zhou. a lonely old man went westward along the southern foot of the Mangshan Range. He left the Central Plains and vowed never to return. Yinshi was overjoyed that the sage heralded by the purple cloud was none other than Laozi. He was glad he would be able to have Laozi help untie the knots in his mind. When Laozi didn't respond to his questions, he became anxious, as this was probably his last opportunity to learn from him. Luckily, an accident brought a favorable turn of events for Yinshi. Laozi had left Laoyi in a hurry, forgetting to take documents verifying his identity with him. Without them, he wasn't allowed to make his way through the pass. This provided Yinshi with an opportunity to spend more time with the sage. According to records of the Grand Historian, Yunshi asked Laozi to write something for him since he was about to retire to a life of seclusion. Laozi agreed and ended up writing a two-part book on the Tao. Legend has it that Laozi was forced to write the Tao Te Ching. However, the profound nature of this book shows it was a work produced when the author was in obviously high spirits. Let us boldly imagine the scene.
先生认为道是一切万物的本源吗？道生于混沌元气，元气产生阴阳，阴阳混合成万物，它们既无形存在，而又按一定的法则运作，绵延不断，无穷无尽。 先生乃当今大圣人也。圣人者，不以一己之志窃为己有，必以天下人志为己任也。今先生将顿世，求教者必难寻矣。何不将先生之志著为书？喜虽浅陋，愿弃官求学，追随先生。
One day in 516 BC, Yunshi left Honggu Pass and went with Laozi westward to Mount Zhongnan, where he had a thatched hut. From then on, Laozi became an inalienable part of Mount Zhongnan, and the mountain has been closely related to Taoist culture ever since. We are not able to tell what Laozi's first impressions of the place were. However, we can imagine how excited he must have been to be in such an idyllic spot. The thick clouds and mist that enveloped the mountaintop perennially fed Laozi's imagination. The overlapping peaks evoked infinite thoughts. He cultivated himself in meditation in pursuit of the Tao. The year 516 BC was most memorable in the history of Chinese philosophy. The watchtower on Mount Zhongnan would inevitably become an important place in world history. The dim lamp flickering from it at night served to illuminate human civilization. Against a backdrop of drifting clouds and mist, Laozi wrote down the lines of his masterpiece.
Dao 可道，非常道。 名可名，非常名。